Hello, my name is Mitch and I draw Blood Force, and it's a new week, it's a new series, and we're going to jump ahead a little bit in the timeline. We're going to leave 1993 behind for a minute and talk about 1994's Gen 13 number 1. But before we do that, we're going to talk about Blood Force for just a quick minute. Hello, friends. Welcome to Blood Force. So this is Blood Force. Blood Force is a comic book that I write and draw. It is both a celebration and a parody of 90s extreme comics, and it is full of crazy stuff like this, and the action is only getting better with every page. And in order to read Blood Force, all you have to do is open the description below, click the link, go to my Patreon, and subscribe there. By subscribing on my Patreon, not only do you get access to the Blood Force comic, all of it in its entirety, you also get access to every video that I make before I post it to YouTube, usually about a week or two in advance, as well as the pre-Blood Force stuff. So we're talking about the sketches I made coming up with Blood Force, as well as a couple of projects I worked on before I did Blood Force. All this for just $3 American. You cannot get Arm Blades and Vengeance for a better price. So subscribe today, let's get Blood Force out on those shelves, and let's give the world the comics it deserves. Alright, so Gen 13, featuring the hot new talent J. Scott Campbell. I guess we should kind of start with him, because he's very involved in the creation of Gen 13. So J. Scott Campbell, if you didn't know, gets started with Image at the age of about 20 during the Homage talent search. So J. Scott Campbell puts together a submission package, sends it off to Jim Lee, and a week and a half later, Jim Lee calls him back and asks him if he feels like moving to San Diego. And that's just how easy it was in 1993. I don't know if Jim would call you with that today, but it's worth a shot. We should all just inundate Jim Lee with packages until he calls us all up and invites us to live in San Diego. That's just, obviously the way we should be doing things. But, so J. Scott Campbell got his start the way Marvel used to do things, where he got a couple pinups, like did the Homage swimsuit special, naturally, and as well as got a couple pages in Deathmate Black. He got a good chunk of Stormwatch number 0. And, he got a lot of nice support stuff until Jim Lee was convinced that, no, I think he can handle his own title. And I guess they collaborated on Gen 13, which was originally supposed to be titled Gen X. I remember that. And I believe Marvel was like, no, you're fucking not. And so Gen 13 it is. So starting with the cover here. Decent cover. Better than some of the ones we've seen. Very, very J. Scott, where he likes to put in sort of a montage. And, of course, get some cheesecake in there. And interesting note, this came out February of 94. Cover is dated September of 93. So 6 months between drawing and actually being published, which, I don't know, it's just an interesting thing to note. All right, so who's writing this thing? At the beginning, at least, Jim Lee and Brandon Choi. So, the story's not going to be great, most likely. Pencils by J. Scott Campbell, inks by Alex Garner. They would be a team going forward for quite some time. Colors by Joe Chiodo. That's not bad. And then letters by Chris Eliopoulos. Really, he's kind of branching away from Savage Dragon. That's cool. All right, and this is kind of a large team working on this, actually. It's a little different from what we're used to. If this had been produced in late 1992, we would have been seeing 3 dudes and Jim Valentino's wife, and that's all you get for putting together a comic book. So what we're doing here, from what I understand, the deal with the Gen program is teenagers volunteer for something, and then it turns out that the program's actually a prison. They're trying to give teenagers superpowers, and then Gen 13 is going to escape. And the reason they're Gen 13 is because they're the 13th generation of tries at this. So we open with a couple on the run in the rain. And, I mean, this all looks pretty good so far. A lot of detail. And I think we're going to see a fair bit more of that. J. Scott Campbell was never one of the guys I really followed at the time, so I don't know what his schedule was like, if he had problems with keeping a monthly schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if he stays on the more detailed end of things. Although this page here, not as much. Honestly, it doesn't really look much like J. Scott Campbell. Little bits here and there, like how he does the mouth here. Yeah, you can see a little bit of Art Adams in there every once in a while. Oh, and this is the mother getting shot down while the father and the two kids try to escape. And he blows up the ship that's trailing him. So it turns out he's Gen active. And they didn't tell us he was Gen 12. So why do you think you were chasing him? I want to try and pay attention, see if there would be another reason why they would be chasing him. Unless maybe they thought it was just the girl. I guess it could be that. And blowing up the ship there has broken his brain, so kids just have to escape on their own. And guy gets gunned down, and that's the end of it. And that's undoubtedly these kids' origin story. Yeah, pretty detailed reference right here with the Darth Vader shirt. This is meant to be 1979? Yeah. Okay, maybe. Yeah. Did they redo any of these panels here? I don't think so. Could have. But then again, this is J. Scott Campbell trying to make an impression too, right? He probably doesn't want a photocopy right off the bat. But this all looks all right. And then we're flipping directly to Caitlin Fairchild. Yep, they mentioned her right away. Good. And again, we're getting a high level of detail. And this is all pretty good for, a 20-year-old kid, where this is his first real condensed, like, page-to-page work. So we'll see if this holds up. So this is all just really introducing us to Fairchild, who's a brainy kid, 4.0 average, advanced degree in computer science, and her roommate at this point is Alexa, who's like a socialite type. I'm going to guess she doesn't factor into this, except to tell her, Fairchild, that some suits came by earlier to see her, and then they come back again later that day to tell her she's been accepted into the Gen 13 program, and that she's got to pack her shit and get out of the dorm and follow them right away to go and get ready for the program because it begins tomorrow. And she just kind of goes, well, what about my school and my family? No, we got it. It's fine. It's taken care of. And she just kind of goes along with it, I guess. It does kind of beg the question, is this something that she signed up for? Because that would make a bit more sense if they bandy it about like it's some prestigious scholarship program or internship or something along those lines. She signs up for it and she says, oh shit, this is my one chance to get this thing that's going to look super prestigious. That would make some, but they don't really mention that here, so maybe later on. And we've got that, this is just one thing I want to point out. We've got that Art Adams influence smile here. J. Scott Campbell, his major influence is Art Adams. He's pretty much the reason he's in comics in the first place was because somebody showed him a copy of X-Men Annual number 10, apparently. And he went, shit, I need to draw these. So we'll see some Art Adams influence from time to time. It's interesting because the other guy who comes to mind when we're talking about that weird kind of pointy smile is Rob Liefeld, who was also influenced by Art Adams. So not too many similarities between the two other than that, but just a interesting little link. So now we're going to cut to I.O., International Operations, which we first saw in Wildcats number 1, and this is the guy we saw. This is John Lynch. And so he's going to be in charge of the Gen 13 project, I believe. Because from what I recall, he shows up in a lot of the Gen 13 promotional material. So he's finding out what the deal is, why, some of his Black Razor teams that, again, we saw in Wildcats have been requisitioned. She's in charge of I.O. Well, she's one of the 3 in charge of I.O. She took them for security. He finds out over the course of a long and bloated conversation that the Gen program, Gen whatever program, is being reactivated. So it was active before, got decommissioned, and now is being reopened because the guy running the I.O. wants superpowered SPBs, they call them, superpowered beings. So they finally have a name for them. And oh my god, we get Brandon Choi dialogue. How are you selecting them? We're doing a nationwide gen factor search along the same parameters that were set for Phase 1. This time, though, the focus is being placed on the progeny of the Gen 12. Once the test population is established, we'll start the selection process utilizing the catalytic activator. I mean, I guess I do this with Maxtremus too on my comic. The difference is that, like, Maxtremus has giant boobs that, like, you know, at least you got something to look at while all this is going on. So they have one gen active from who's one of the kids of the Gen 12 program, and his name is Threshold. So if the whole if story structure is the thing Brandon Choi pays attention to, that should probably be this kid here. And reading ahead a little bit, that does seem to be the case as far as I can tell. So Threshold here is training and showing off that he's got moves, but then he gets caught here. Awkward sort of those don't really match up. It's interesting. They just not notice? Maybe. Or are those nunchucks? Oh, they are nunchucks, I think. So it would have made sense if the hair didn't hide it. And I wonder if he finds a way around that in future. These look pretty Art Adams influenced. It's good stuff. But he does appear to be a poor sport, because when he does get caught out for gloating and then immediately gets hit afterwards, he's going to just flat out blow a dude's head off. Pretty good head explosion. And that scares off all his instructors, imagine that. And then it turns out he is a drug addict as well. It's all right. And this is a pretty J. Scott Campbell looking guy. So he's some aspects he's already got down, or he's getting the hang of pretty quick. And this is his sister. And they do mention here that their father neutralized a combat-trained Black Razor team. So you would think that was the guy at the beginning of the book. Although her hair is a different color. Maybe she dyed it. And again, very J. Scott Campbell looking panel here. Okay, and here we find out, so Lynch is going to talk to Threshold here, and we find out that Lynch was part of Gen 12, which feels like this is the first time we're hearing that. Yeah, there's some business before about Phase 1 doing something to him and his family, but they don't actually say that he was Gen 12, but they do now. And Team 7, which is the Death Blow team, I think. And we find out that Lynch's son was taken away from him. So this Gen 13 sweep they're doing potentially could find his son if he's out there somewhere. That's something. And Threshold refuses to help because he's an asshole. And then we see some stuff with Fairchild, and this is all the stuff I was wondering about, where they talk about the Gen 13 program being an internship position, and it's all super selective and very prestigious, and you get a stipend, and it looks good for your education. So okay, all that stuff's here. It just would have been a little useful if we'd seen it up front, so I didn't know so we knew what the fuck was going on. And then she wakes up in the morning, and we've got Grunge running around in the tunnels and just causing a mess. And this is going to be, like, up till now, none of the dialogue has been particularly fun, but it's like the artwork undermines that a little bit. Particularly when we get to this point, anyway. And it's interesting, because this is where the art starts to get more fun when we get to the Gen 13 team members. The dialogue doesn't really, but it's like it has to try and keep up. It gets a bit more lighthearted. So I don't know. It feels like maybe J. Scott Campbell's having a bit of a positive influence on Brandon Choi here. And we get all our members introduced here. Naturally, Grunge falls on Fairchild so that, they can do some sexual assault humor. And, we see Roxy and Bobby, and Roxy smokes. Not allowed to do that. Right next to a no smoking sign. All right, and we're getting ready for the day's Gen activities. Oh, that actually is kind of a bit of a pun. I'm not doing that again. And, yeah, Brandon Choi doesn't know how to do this fun either. So, as the days pass, the young people are put through a battery of tests that analyze their physical as well as mental attributes. The 4 members of Pod 7 soon learn that they work best together as a team and succeed in the program, while many of the other groups quickly fall apart and fail out of the program. Okay, so there is useful information there that there's, more than one pod that, and, they're looking for groups that generate, like, teamwork, cohesion kind of thing. It's just delivered very dry, as is tradition with Brandon Choi. And we're going to get a Jim Lee pinup of Gen 13. And it's a actual pinup, too. Like, you could take this right out. And it's a triple gatefold. This is kind of jumping ahead a little bit. I mean, we know from the cover that shit's going to go down, but I guess all this stuff was kind of put out before the comic was, probably. So, it's not a huge spoiler, I guess. It's just kind of like, okay, do you guys even know what you're doing? I don't know. It feels like this stuff should be held off until we kind of confirm that this is a superhero team, or I guess that's going to get confirmed before the end of the issue. But, I mean, jumping from seeing the group, like, kind of bouncing around the halls and doing, like, team exercises and shit, to standing there in fucking, pseudo-military gear. And, the one dude's on fire. These guys have gigantic guns, all of them. It's a little bit jarring, maybe. That might have been a good pinup for issue 2. I don't know. All right, so we're going to cut back to Threshold and his sister. Did we mention her name? Nicole. Okay. All right. So she gets a real name. He does not. Good to know. All right. So they're overlooking the Gen 13 team. And you got that Art Adams arm hair. Classic. Good panels here, like computer panels. Although, needed a bit of separation here. Now, well, shit's gonna happen. And I mean, it's 20-year-old J. Scott Campbell. He's gonna get the hang of it pretty fucking quick. So they're saying how the Pod 7 is coming along nicely. They're Bobby and Roxy are starting to manifest powers already. They're just like beginning to. Grunge and Fairchild not so much. So they're going to up the dosages of some activator drugs in their meals. They'll give them one more day to manifest, and if nothing happens by then, they're going to dispose of them, which I assume means kill them off. She's a ruthless CIA-type lady. Naturally, that's what's going to happen. And Fairchild keeps waking up with these awful headaches. And just flat out thrown up here. So she's going to get up and she's going to look for the infirmary. And this is a nice composition here with the framing. This kind of gets in the way of it a bit. But I think maybe he'll find a way around that soon. It's interesting seeing early days guys. Like guys who become like, J. Scott Campbell's one of the big dogs now. Where he's in that, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane position these days. Or, even like 5 years from this issue here. So seeing him when he hasn't quite figured it out yet, it's interesting to look at. So Fairchild's going to go looking around. That's a choice. I kind of like that. This leaves an awful lot of space, though. That seems unnecessary. Feels like you could have just moved her over. This is just... just kind of seeing what he decides to do here. And what we're seeing is that Fairchild is starting to develop super strength very quickly. And she goes the wrong way, ends up in a control room, which is all turned on and completely active and everything. And the first, she looks up Fairchild, I suppose, and gets her father, Alex Fairchild, from Gen 12. All right. And then gets jumped by Grunge because Grunge and Roxy apparently sneak off here fairly often. And then they get discovered by a Black Razor team who are super aggressive, I gotta say. Although the dialogue is, again, starting to get a bit more fun. So maybe Brandon Choi's starting to keep up a little bit. But, yeah, no, he slams Fairchild around because she's really not supposed to be there. Smacks Grunge out of the way and activates Fairchild. She hulks out. And, yeah, one punches him, and then she hulks right out of her dress. And he's going to do it so that she looks like the fucking 50-foot woman with the perspective. Well done. But he's still going to spoon some ice cream and just like, man, all right. It's a good show. And, yeah, that's some J. Scott Campbell shit right there. It looks a bit more together than the cover, though. Oh, no, and here they're pulling the image number 0 scam again. So, each of the first 4 issues of Gen 13, well, here they say each of the issues of Gen 13. Gen 13 actually runs for 5 issues, but they don't know that at this point. So each of them is supposed to have one of these coupons. This is number 1 of the 4 coupon set. You clip it out, you send it off to Jim, and, well, if you send all 4, he's going to issue you a copy of Gen 13 number 0, Ashcan. The issue itself will be available on the shelves, but I guess the Ashcan is exclusive. Do we want to see if the Ashcan exists? I think we do. Well, there is such a thing as a Gen 13 Ashcan, issued November of 1994, and 32 pages, so I imagine it's at least most of the issue. So, it seems like it was produced. I have no idea what the print run was or if anybody got one, but at least a bit less of a scam than image number 0, maybe. It depends on what the content was, I suppose. But we also get a Gen 13 sketchbook. This first issue is kind of packed a little bit. Got a poster already, got the 24 pages of comic. And we're going to get some sketchbook stuff by Jim and by J. Scott. I assume it's Jeffrey, right? Because that's what he went by before J. Scott Campbell was Jeffrey Scott. That was it. Yeah, we get the nerdy Fairchild versus Fairchild with boobs. Another J. Scott and another Jim Lee page. And this is one of the designs for a t-shirt from Deathmate Black, which I don't remember ever seeing, but that's all Deathmate Black stuff. Very different kind of style for Jim. It's interesting. And then just a couple of ads. We're going to get The Kindred, starring Grifter and what's-his-face, Backlash, and drawn by Brett Booth, who's trying to up his Jim Lee ripoff game. Not doing a terrible job. And then we get Death Blow number 3, introducing the hard-hitting art of Tim Sale, artist on Legends of the Dark Knight, Batman, Shadow of the Bat, and Grendel. So that will be interesting. I do have that. I haven't taken a look through it yet. But, I mean, Tim Sale's a guy who actually, will compose a page for black and white artwork. So, I feel like that works better with Deathblow than Jim Lee doing some weird, no holding line shit. So that'll definitely be worth checking out at some point. And just some conventions. The Killer Instinct Tour, the Third Leg, the famous Third Leg. Okay, so that was Gen 13 number 1. I mean, you got a fair amount of stuff in there. We got pretty much the entire origin, really. I suppose. Not bad. It wasn't super fun to read, but it was pretty fun to look at, which is what I assume the rest of the miniseries is going to end up being anyway. But, looking forward to checking out 2 and 3 now. Because I never really got a chance to look at these before. By the time these came out, I was starting to lose track of Image titles. So like, Gen 13 is like, oh man, that's just some new guy. I don't need an Image comic that's produced by a non-founder. These other ones produced by the founders are so good. That's all I need. or maybe I was starting to get a little disappointed. Who knows? And J. Scott Campbell would kind of go on to breathe new life into Image a little bit. Well, Homage anyway, at least. So, yeah, interested to see where that goes. But that's going to do it for this one. Join me next time for Gen 13 number 2. But if you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notifications. Go over and follow me on Twitter. More importantly, go and subscribe on Patreon. That's where all these videos go as soon as they're uploaded. So, for instance, Gen 13 Issue 2 and 3 revisits are complete and sitting in the archive? Sure, right now. They are sitting in the archive. As well as every page of Blood Force and a bunch of Patreon exclusive stuff now. Well, we're getting there. So subscribe now. It's worth the $3 American. It's about what this comic costs, just after tax and all that shit, right? Oh, you guys don't do tax like that. Oh, I don't even know how you guys do tax anyway. Fuck, that's a rabbit hole. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.